My sister quit her job to be an influencer, so my parents demanded I pay her bills. When she tried forcing me into a luxury car loan, I didn't scream. I quietly initiated a financial audit that would expose her secret and leave them with nothing. Before we begin today's story, we have an urgent announcement. Due to technical issues, this channel is shutting down. But don't worry, the stories continue. Please subscribe to our new channel, Daily Drip Stories. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. I was lying in the dark, a cold compress pressed against my forehead, when my phone began to buzz against the nightstand. It wasn't a gentle notification. It was the relentless, vibrating drill of a call that wouldn't go away. I cracked one eye open, the light from the screen stabbing into my migraine like a physical needle. "Mom!" I groaned, rolling onto my side. My body felt like it was made of lead. I had just finished a 70-hour work week, finalizing a massive data migration project for a client that had nearly broken me. I had been awake for 36 hours straight before finally crashing 2 hours ago. My limbs were heavy, my head was throbbing with a pulse that felt like a hammer, and my throat was raw from dry office air and too much coffee. I fumbled for the device, my fingers clumsy. "Hello," I rasped, my voice barely a whisper. "Julia, you need to come over." "Now," my mother, Nora, said. Her voice wasn't panicked. It was sharp, authoritative. It was the tone she used when the neighbors hadn't cut their grass to her standards, or when a waiter brought her sparkling water instead of still. "Mom, I'm sick," I managed to say, squeezing my eyes shut. "I have a migraine, I haven't slept in days. Can't this wait until—" "No," she cut me off. "It cannot wait. It's about Adeline. It's an emergency family meeting. Christopher is already pouring drinks. Get in the car, Julia. We need you here." The line went dead. Adeline, of course. My younger sister's name was like a summoning spell for chaos. If Adeline had a hangnail, it was a medical crisis. If Adeline was bored, it was a depression requiring a family intervention. I dragged myself out of bed, the room spinning. I pulled on a pair of sweatpants and a hoodie, not bothering to brush my hair or check the mirror. I knew I looked like a ghost, but I didn't care. If this was an emergency, appearance didn't matter. The drive to my parents' house was a blur of streetlights streaking against my windshield. My stomach churned, not just from the migraine, but from a growing sense of dread. The emergency usually meant Adeline needed money, or bail, or someone to blame for her latest failure. When I walked into the house, the air was thick with the scent of expensive potpourri and tension. They were in the living room. My father, Christopher, was sitting in his leather armchair, swirling a glass of scotch. Nora was pacing by the fireplace. And there was Adeline. She wasn't crying. She wasn't injured. She was lounging on the beige sofa, scrolling through her phone, looking radiant. She was wearing a new outfit, silk, likely designer, and her hair was perfectly blown out. "I'm here," I said, leaning against the doorframe for support. "Is everyone okay? What happened?" Nora stopped pacing and clasped her hands together, looking at me with a beatific smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Julia, thank goodness. Sit down." I sank onto the ottoman, the only seat not occupied by my parents' ego or Adeline's entitlement. "What is going on?" "Adeline has made a brave decision," Christopher announced, his voice booming with a pride I had never heard directed at me, despite my master's degree or my recent promotion. "I quit," Adeline said, not looking up from her phone. I blinked. You quit your job? You've only been there for 3 months. It's an entry-level marketing role. Why?" "It was toxic," Adeline sighed, finally dropping the phone to her lap. She looked at me with wide, pitiful eyes that I knew she practiced in the mirror. "The 9-to-5 grind? It's draining my spirit, Julia. It's killing my creativity. I can't be caged like that. I'm an artist, a creator. I need to focus on my brand full-time." I looked around the room, waiting for the punchline. Adeline had 400 followers on Instagram and mostly posted pictures of her lattes. Okay, I said slowly. So, you're looking for a new job? No, Nora interjected, sounding offended. She is going to pursue content creation. She is going to be an influencer. It takes time to build an empire, Julia. You of all people should understand that things don't happen overnight. Okay, I said, rubbing my temple where the headache was pounding. So she's moving back home to save money. The room went silent. Christopher took a long sip of scotch. Adeline picked at a loose thread on the sofa cushion. Nora straightened her spine. That wouldn't be conducive to her image, Nora said coldly. She needs her apartment in the city. It's her studio. It's where she creates. She can't be seen living with her parents at 24. It would ruin her brand aesthetic. So, I started, confusion clouding my brain. How is she paying her rent? It's $2,500 a month. Nora and Christopher exchanged a look I had seen 1,000 times before. It was the look of two people who had already made a decision and were just waiting to inform the staff. We've looked at the family finances, Christopher said, clearing his throat. With the market the way it is, our liquidity is a bit tied up in the retirement accounts. We can't pull from the principal without penalties. So, Nora continued, her voice light and breezy, as if discussing the weather. Since you have that high-paying data job and you're single and you live so frugally, we decided you will cover Adeline's expenses for the next year, just until she takes off. I froze, the room seemed to tilt. Excuse me. It's just rent, utilities, and her car payment, Adeline added helpfully. And maybe a small allowance for content production, like clothes and makeup, business expenses. You want me to pay for her life? I whispered, my voice trembling. I have a mortgage, I have student loans, I have my own retirement to fund. Don't be selfish, Julia, Nora snapped. You make plenty, you're always bragging about your bonuses. This is your sister. This is her dream. We are a family, and in this family, we support each other. I looked at them, my father avoiding my eyes, my mother glaring at me with disdain, and Adeline looking bored, expecting the check to already be written. The migraine was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as an ATM. I'm not doing it, I said. Nora's face twisted. What did you say? I said no. I am not paying $4,000 a month so Adeline can play pretend on the internet while I work myself to death. It's not a request, Julia, Christopher said, his voice dropping an octave. We've already told Adeline she can count on you. Do not embarrass us. I stood up, my legs shaking. I'm going home. If you walk out that door, Nora shouted, don't expect us to be happy about it. I walked out, but as I reached the handle, I heard Adeline's voice, quiet and smug. She'll do it. She always does what she's told. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. It was a rot that had been spreading for years, and I had just now smelled the stench. The silence of my own house usually brought me peace, but that night it felt like a tomb. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat at my kitchen island, the granite cold under my palms, staring at my banking app on my phone. I worked hard. I worked incredibly hard. I had missed weddings, birthdays, and holidays to secure my position as a senior data analyst. I lived below my means, driving a 6-year-old sedan and shopping at discount grocery stores, specifically so I could feel safe. So I wouldn't have to rely on anyone. And now, my parents had volunteered my safety net as a trampoline for Adeline. By 7:00 a.m., the text messages started. Nora, I hope you've rested and come to your senses. We are disappointed in your attitude last night. Christopher, family supports family. Don't be the villain here, Jules. Adeline, hey, can you Venmo me $300? I have a brunch meeting with a potential collab partner and my card was declined lol. Thanks, sis. I didn't reply to any of them. I felt a strange dissociation, like I was watching my life on a screen. I went through the motions of my morning, shower, coffee, dress, but my mind was racing, replaying the scene in the living room. We decided you will cover Adeline's expenses. Not asked. decided. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Adeline. I ignored it. It rang again. And again. Then a text from Nora, "Answer your sister. It is urgent." I finally picked up, putting it on speaker as I typed a query into my work terminal. "What?" Finally, Adeline's voice was high-pitched, breathless. "Where are you? You need to come to the dealership on State Street. Right now." I stopped typing. "The car dealership? Why?" "My lease is up next month on the compact," she said, speaking quickly. "And Mom and Dad said since I'm rebranding, I need a car that fits the aesthetic. An SUV, we found the perfect one. It's white with tan leather, totally clean girl vibe." "And?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My stomach twisted into a knot. "And the finance guy is being annoying. He says because I don't have proof of income right now since I just quit, I need a cosigner. Mom and Dad's credit is tied up with the house refinance, so they said you'd come down and sign. It's just a formality. I'll make the payments once my BR." And takes off. I closed my eyes. They weren't asking for rent anymore. They were escalating. They were trying to shackle me to a $50,000 debt for a car I would never drive. "Adeline," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "I am at work." "So take a lunch break," she whined. "God, Julia, why do you have to be so difficult? Mom is already here. She's waiting for you." "Mom is there." "Yes, she's looking at colors with me. Just get here. We're in the finance office." I hung up the phone. I stared at the black screen for a long moment. A normal person would have screamed. A normal person would have cried. But I was a data analyst. I dealt in facts, in patterns, in logical progressions. And the pattern here was undeniable. They would consume me until there was nothing left. I stood up, grabbing my purse. I wasn't going there to sign. I was going there to end this. As I walked to the elevator, a cold resolve settled over me. They thought they had me cornered. They thought that by ambushing me in public, with a salesman watching, I would crumble to avoid a scene. They thought I was the same quiet, compliant daughter who just wanted to be praised. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I was the executor of my grandmother's estate, and I had access to every single financial document my parents had generated in the last 10 years. To understand why this hurt so much, you have to understand the ecosystem of my family. I was the planter, Adeline was the flower. I was the soil, she was the bloom. Growing up, I was the responsible one. If I got an A, it was expected. If I cleaned the house, it was my chore. If I wanted something, I was told to save my allowance. Adeline was different. She was the creative spirit. If she drew a stick figure, it was framed. If she made a mess, it was expression. If she wanted something, it was given to her because denying her would dim her light. I worked 3 jobs in college to pay my tuition so my parents wouldn't have to take out loans. I graduated debt-free from sheer exhaustion and grit. When Adeline went to college, a private liberal arts school that cost 3 times what my state university did, Nora and Christopher paid for everything. Tuition, sorority dues, spring break trips to Cabo. When she dropped out after 2 years because it wasn't her vibe, they threw her a welcome home party. I had spent my entire adult life trying to buy their love with competence. I did their taxes. I managed their retirement portfolios. I fixed their computers. I thought if I was useful enough, they would finally look at me the way they looked at her. But as I pulled into the dealership lot, parking my dented sedan next to a row of gleaming luxury SUVs, I realized that utility isn't love. To them, I was just a resource, a battery to be drained to keep Adeline's lights on. I walked into the showroom. It was all glass and chrome, smelling of new rubber and expensive cologne. I spotted them immediately in a glass-walled office near the back. Adeline was sitting in the client chair, spinning back and forth. She looked like a model out of a catalog, perfect makeup, expensive athleisure wear, a designer bag casually thrown on the desk. A bag that I knew cost more than my first car. Nora was next to her, nodding aggressively at a man in a sharp suit. I opened the glass door. The air conditioning was freezing. Ah, the sister. The salesman beamed, standing up and extending a hand. We were just talking about you. I'm Gary. Your family tells me you're the financial wizard of the group. I didn't shake his hand. I looked at Adeline. Hey, she said, not even looking up from checking her reflection in her compact mirror. Took you long enough. Gary says if we sign now, I can drive it off the lot today. It's a Range Rover, Nora said, her eyes gleaming. Julia, look at the interior, it's cream leather. It matches Adeline's aesthetic perfectly. How much is it? I asked, looking at Gary. Well, Gary hesitated, sensing the drop in temperature in the room. With the trim package and the extended warranty your mother insisted on, we're looking at about $85,000. But the monthly payments are very manageable over 84 months. $85,000, I repeated, for an unemployed 24-year-old. Self-employed, Adeline snapped, snapping her compact shut. I am a content creator, Julia. It's a business. This is a business asset. And you want me to co-sign, I said, turning to Nora. Ideally, Nora said, her voice dropping to a hiss. Or, Gary said it might be easier if you just signed as the primary buyer, since your credit score is, what was it, 810. 820, I corrected automatically. Right, so you sign as the buyer, Adeline is the driver. We'll work out the payments between us later. It keeps the insurance simple. They weren't asking me to co-sign. They were asking me to buy the car. They wanted me to take out an $85,000 loan in my name, hand the keys to Adeline, and trust that we'll work it out later. I looked at Adeline. She was smirking. A tiny, barely perceptibly smirk. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew I had money in my savings. She knew I had excellent credit. And she felt entitled to all of it because she was Adeline and I was just Julia. She checked her watch, a Rolex my father had given her for her 21st birthday. I had received a card and a $50 gift certificate to a bookstore for mine. Can we hurry this up? Adeline huffed. I have to film a day in the life reel at 4:00, and I want the car in the background. I looked at the salesman who was holding the pen out to me. I looked at my mother, whose eyes were hard and demanding. And then I looked at Adeline, the golden child, the parasite in silk. The sadness I had felt the night before evaporated. The migraine vanished. In its place was a cold, mathematical rage. I need a moment alone with my family, I said to Gary. Of course, he said, sensing the tension. I'll grab some waters. He slipped out, closing the glass door. What is your problem? Nora hissed the second he was gone. Just sign the papers, Julia. Do not make a scene. I looked at them, really looked at them. No, I said. Adeline laughed. What? No, I said again, louder. I'm not signing. I'm not co-signing. I'm not paying your rent. I'm not funding your lifestyle. You selfish little, Nora started, rising from her chair. Sit down, Mother, I said. My voice was low, but it had a steel in it they had never heard before. We need to talk about why Adeline really quit her job. Adeline's smirk faltered. Her eyes darted to the side. What are you talking about? Adeline said, her voice shrill. I told you it was toxic. I know, I said. I know exactly how toxic it was, because unlike you, Adeline, I do my research. I didn't wait for their reaction to my comment about doing research. I didn't wait for Adeline to come up with a lie or for my mother to start screaming. I simply turned around, walked out of the glass office, walked past Gary, who was holding a tray of mini water bottles, and exited the dealership. The moment the heavy glass doors swung shut behind me, the silence of the outdoors hit me. It was a humid, overcast Tuesday, the kind of weather that makes your clothes stick to your skin. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice before I could unlock my sedan. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, just breathing. In, out, in, out. My phone was already lighting up on the passenger seat. Mom, 3 missed calls, Adeline text, what the hell, Julia? Dad text, get back in here now. I turned the phone off. I didn't go back to work. I drove to a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town, one where I knew I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. I ordered a black coffee, opened my laptop, and did what I did best. I analyzed the data. I hadn't been bluffing in the office, but I hadn't had the full picture yet. I had pieces, fragments. Adeline's resignation had smelled wrong from the start. Adeline didn't quit things that gave her money unless she had a better offer. And she certainly didn't quit without a dramatic social media post announcing her departure. I had checked her Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Radio silence about the job, that was the first red flag. The second flag was a LinkedIn notification I'd received 2 days ago. I was connected with the HR director of the marketing firm Adeline had worked for, a woman named Sarah who I'd met at a Women in Tech mixer a year ago. Sarah had posted a generic article about the importance of internal security and ethics. It was vague, but the timing was suspicious. I opened my laptop and connected to the coffee shop's Wi-Fi. I didn't hack anything, I didn't need to. I simply logged into the family trust portal. Years ago, when my grandmother passed, she left a modest inheritance. To prevent my parents from spending it on vacations, she had named me the executor and trustee. The money was meant for emergencies and education. I had access to view all activity, though my parents had debit cards linked to the interest account for household repairs. I pulled up the transaction history for the last 3 months. My breath hitched. The account, which should have had a steady balance, was showing a series of erratic withdrawals. $500, cash withdrawal, ATM, $200, Sephora $1,200, consulting fee, Venmo transfer to Addy Vibes, $4,500, transfer to C&N joint checking. I frowned. The transfer to my parents' joint checking was normal, maybe they needed a roof repair. But the Venmo to Adeline? The Sephora charge. I opened a second tab. I logged into my own bank account. For the last 5 years, I had been sending my parents $1,000 a month. They called it rent for the room I hadn't lived in for 7 years, claiming they were holding it for me or using it to maintain the Miley home which would one day be mine. I looked at the transfer history. Every month on the first, $1,000 left my account. I needed to see where it went. I pulled up my phone and turned it back on. I ignored the 42 new notifications and dialed Sarah, the HR director. She picked up on the second ring. "Julia, hey, it's been a while." "Hi, Sarah," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "I know you can't discuss specific personnel files legally. I'm not asking for official records." "Okay," Sarah's voice grew guarded. "I just need to know if I should be worried about legal retaliation against my family," I lied. It was a calculated risk. "Adeline told us she quit, but she's asking for a significant amount of money for legal fees regarding a dispute with the firm. I need to know if we're being sued." Silence stretched on the line. I could hear Sarah typing in the background. "Julia," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There is no lawsuit from our end. We just wanted her gone. We signed a non-disclosure agreement regarding the details of the exit, but I can tell you this as a friend. Do not give her money for legal fees. There are no fees. We chose not to prosecute as long as she returned the equipment." "Prosecute," I choked out. "For what?" "I can't say," Sarah said firmly. "But check your credit cards, and check any company accounts she might have had access to. Just be careful, Julia." The line clicked dead. "Prosecute." I looked back at the trust fund statement. The $1,200 transfer to Adeline wasn't an allowance. It was a test. She was testing the waters. My phone buzzed again. A text from my father. "Christopher, we are at home. Adeline is distraught. You have caused a scene and embarrassed us in front of a business associate. Come home immediately to apologize and fix this car situation." Fix the car situation. I closed my laptop. The cold clarity from the night before returned, but this time it was sharper. It was a blade. I wasn't going to fix the car situation. I was going to burn the dealership down, metaphorically speaking. I spent the next hour downloading every single PDF statement from the trust, my personal transfers, and the joint account my parents had foolishly added me to in case of emergency years ago. I built a spreadsheet. I color-coded the unauthorized spending. I cross-referenced dates. By the time I finished, I had a timeline, and the timeline told a story of theft, enabling, and delusion. I drove to my parents' house. I didn't speed. I obeyed every traffic law. I felt like an executioner walking to the scaffold. When I walked into the house, the atmosphere was funereal. Adeline was no longer on the sofa. She was curled up in the oversized armchair, clutching a box of tissues. Nora was sitting next to her, stroking her hair. Christopher was pacing the kitchen, a fresh drink in his hand. They all looked up as I entered. "You," Nora spat, standing up. "How dare you, leaving us there? Gary thought we were insane. We had to tell him you were having a mental health episode." "A mental health episode?" I repeated, placing my laptop bag on the dining table. "Is that what we're calling it?" "You humiliated your sister," Christopher boomed, walking into the living room. "She needs this car, Julia. Her image is her livelihood. Without the car, she can't get the brand deals. If she can't get the deals, she can't pay us back. You are sabotaging her future." "She can't pay you back anyway," I said, unzipping my bag. "What is that supposed to mean?" Adeline sniffled, peering over the tissue. "I have potential contracts lined up. I just need the equipment." "I spoke to Sarah," I said. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Adeline's face went from tragic victim to white sheet pale in a nanosecond. She sat up, the tissues falling to the floor. You called my old job." "I did," I said. "She was very interesting. She mentioned the word prosecute. She mentioned stolen equipment. She mentioned that they chose not to press charges only because they just wanted you out of the building." Nora looked between me and Adeline, her brow furrowed. "Julia, stop lying. Adeline told us her boss was threatened by her creativity, that she was jealous." "Is that what she said?" I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward them. I hadn't just built a spreadsheet, I had found the police log. It turns out, when police are called to a business for a theft in progress, involving a jagged value over $1,000, it makes the public blotter. It was right there on the local precinct's daily log, dated 3 days ago. Subject removed from premises of Vantage Marketing. Possession of company iPads and unauthorized use of corporate credit card for personal luxury goods. I read it aloud. My voice didn't shake. "That's a lie," Adeline shrieked, jumping up. "They planted that, they set me up because I wouldn't sleep with the VP." "Stop," I said. "Just stop, Adeline. There is no VP. It's a boutique firm run by 3 women. I checked the org chart." Nora stared at the screen, reading the text. She blinked rapidly. I waited for the realization, for the anger, for the parenting to finally kick in. "Well," Nora said finally, smoothing her skirt. Clearly, there was a misunderstanding. Adeline probably thought the card was part of her compensation package. She's young, Julia. She doesn't understand corporate bureaucracy like you do. I felt my jaw unhinge. Misunderstanding, Mom, she stole. She was fired for theft. She didn't quit. "She was under pressure," Christopher yelled, slamming his hand on the counter. "And instead of helping her, you're digging up dirt like some private investigator. Why do you hate your sister?" "I don't hate her," I said, feeling a bubble of hysterical laughter rising in my chest. "I'm trying to show you who she is so you don't lose your house." "We are not losing our house," Christopher scoffed. "We are fine, we just have a liquidity issue." "You have a liquidity issue," I said, tapping a key to switch tabs on the screen, "because Adeline has been draining the emergency repair fund for 6 months." I brought up the spreadsheet, the colorful rows of theft. Venmo, Addy Vibes, $500, $600, $1,200, $300. I pointed to each one, totaling $14,000 since January. Adeline froze. She looked at our parents, her eyes wide. I needed that for my portfolio. I told you guys I was borrowing it. She asked, Nora said quickly, too quickly. She asked us, Julia, we gave her permission. You gave her permission to drain the money meant for a new boiler, I asked. The money Grandma left. It's family money, Nora shouted. It belongs to all of us. Why are you policing us? It's none of your business. It is my business, I shouted back, my voice finally cracking. Because I am the trustee, and because you are asking me to take out an $80,000 loan for a girl who stole 14 grand from you and got fired for stealing from her boss. It's not stealing if we gave it to her, Christopher roared. And you will sign for that card, Julia. If you don't, you are cutting yourself off from this family. Is that what you want, to be alone? The threat hung in the air. It was the ultimate weapon. They knew I had no husband, no children. They knew my work was my life. They thought the fear of isolation would bring me to my knees. I looked at Adeline. She wasn't scared anymore. She was smiling again. She saw my parents defending her theft, justifying her lies, and she knew she had won. She looked at me with a triumphant, pitying expression. Poor Julia, so bitter, so lonely. She has to pay to be part of the club. Something inside me snapped. Not a violent snap, but a structural one. The support beam that held up my obligation to them finally gave way. You're right, I said softly. I am cutting myself off. Good, Christopher sneered. Now, apologize to your sister and let's go back to the dealership tomorrow. No, I said. I mean, I'm cutting you off. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I had printed it at the coffee shop. This, I said, tossing it onto the table, is my resignation as trustee. I am handing control of the trust over to a third-party fiduciary as stipulated in Grandma's will if I step down. They charge fees, high fees, and they will audit every penny you spend. Nora's face went slack. You can't do that. I just did. I mailed the certified copy on my way here. And, I continued, I am stopping the $1,000 monthly transfer to you, effective immediately. You can't, Nora screamed. We rely on that. That pays the property tax. Then maybe Adeline can pay it, I said, with her influencer money. I closed my laptop. I'm leaving. Do not contact me until you are ready to apologize. And Adeline, if you try to use my name, my credit, or my identity for anything, even a Netflix subscription, I will report you for fraud. I won't be like your old boss. I will prosecute. I walked toward the door. If you walk out that door, my father shouted, repeating the line from the night before, you are no daughter of mine. I stopped. I turned back one last time. I haven't been your daughter for a long time, Dad, I said. I've just been your banker. I thought walking out would be the end of it. I thought the silence would follow. I was naive. The silence lasted exactly 12 hours. The next morning, I woke up not to texts but to notifications. Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. Adeline had gone nuclear. She had posted a video. A storytime video. She sat in her car, the old compact, crying without tears, looking devastatingly beautiful in sad lighting. And it's just so hard when the people who are supposed to support your dreams turn out to be your biggest bullies, she whispered. D into the camera. My own sister, who makes 6 figures, told me I should just give up. She tried to sabotage my mental health recovery. She's jealous of my freedom. She literally cut off my parents' grocery money just to punish me. I'm starting a GoFundMe to help my parents and me survive this financial abuse. I watched the video, my coffee turning into acid in my stomach. It had 4,000 views. The comments were flooding in. OMG, stay strong, queen. Toxic family is the worst. Cut them off. Your sister sounds like a narc. She hadn't named me, but she had tagged my city. It wouldn't take a detective to figure it out. Then came the email from my bank. Alert, suspicious activity detected. I logged in. There was an attempt to reset my password. An attempt made from an IP address that matched my parents' home router. They were trying to get into my accounts. I called the bank immediately. Freeze it, I told the representative. Freeze everything. Two-factor authentication on everything, verbal password for any changes. We also see a credit inquiry, the agent said. An application for a signature loan in the amount of $20,000 was submitted this morning. I didn't authorize that, I said, my voice shaking. Deny it, flag it as fraud. We will, do you know who might have? Yes, I said, my sister, Adeline last name. After I hung up, I realized this wasn't just a family spat anymore. This was war. They weren't just mad, they were desperate. Without my $1,000 a month, and with the trust locked down by the new fiduciary, who wouldn't release funds for vibes, they were drowning. And instead of swimming, they were trying to drown me to use my body as a raft. I needed more than just defense. I needed a nuke. I went back to the data. I had locked down the trust, but I still had the historic records downloaded on my drive. I started looking deeper into the C and N joint checking account, the one my parents used. I had access because they had added me as a signer years ago to help them refinance a loan. I never used it, but I could see it. I scrolled back 2 years. I saw the deposits from me, $1,000, $1,000, $1,000. I saw Christopher's pension. I saw Nora's part-time library income. And then I saw the loans. Home equity line of credit, $40,000. Personal loan, Prosper, $15,000. Credit card consolidation, $12,000. My parents were broke, not just liquidity issue broke, they were destitute. They had leveraged every inch of equity in their house. Where did the money go? I filtered the outgoing transfers. Tuition Art Institute, Adeline. Rent downtown lofts, Adeline. Car payment, Adeline. Venmo, Adeline. Cash App, Adeline. Over the last 4 years, they had funneled nearly $200,000 to her. They had mortgaged their twilight years to fund her cosplay of a rich girl. And now that the credit wells were dry, they needed my fresh, unblemished credit to keep the pipe flowing. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a profound, heartbreaking pity. They were addicts. Adeline was the drug, and they were addicted to making her happy. But then I saw something that killed the pity. A transaction from 3 months ago. Withdrawal, $5,000. Memo, Julia Wedding Fund. I stared at it. Julia Wedding Fund? I wasn't getting married. I didn't have a boyfriend. Then I remembered. My aunt had sent a check 3 months ago, a large check. She had told me on the phone, I sent a little something to your folks to hold for you for when you find the right guy, or for a house down payment. They had cashed it, and the very next day, there was a $5,000 transfer to Nordstrom. They hadn't just wasted their money, they had stolen mine, again. I printed the statement. I printed the GoFundMe page Adeline had started, which was bordering on wire fraud. I printed the bank fraud alert for the loan application. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I was going to end it. I called my aunt, the one who sent the check. Aunt Marge, I said, I need you to come to town, and I need you to bring the copy of the check you sent. Julia, is everything okay? No, I said, but it's about to be over. We're having a family dinner on Sunday, and you're the guest of honor. Adeline wanted an audience. She wanted to tell a story. Fine, I would give her the season finale she deserved. I didn't tell my parents Aunt Marge was coming. I told them I was coming to settle things. To them, that meant I was bringing my checkbook. To me, it meant I was bringing the receipt. Sunday dinner was a sacred ritual in our house, usually reserved for celebrating Adeline's minor achievements or discussing my parents' social calendar. The table was set with the good china, the Wedgwood pattern that I wasn't allowed to touch as a child. The roast chicken smelled of rosemary and denial. When I walked in, the staging was impeccable. Adeline was setting the table, looking humble in a simple sweater, her makeup toned down to repentant D. Odder levels. Nora was stirring gravy, humming a tune. Christopher was decanting a bottle of red wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Julia, Nora said, turning with a tight, expectant smile. You're late, but we'll forgive it. Sit down. Christopher, pour her a glass. I'm driving, I said, remaining standing. Oh, stop being a martyr, Christopher grumbled, pouring the wine anyway. We're celebrating. Adeline has some good news. I looked at my sister. Do you? I do, Adeline beamed, the fake humility vanishing instantly. I found a way to make the car payments work. Gary called. He said if you put down a $10,000 down payment, the monthly rate drops, and he can approve it with you as a cosigner instead of the primary buyer. It's a compromise. See, I'm meeting you halfway. I stared at her. You want me to give you $10,000 cash and cosign? It's an investment, she chirped. And I took down the GoFundMe. I realized it was impulsive, so we're good, right? Sit down, Julia, Nora commanded, gesturing to my seat. Let's eat. We can sign the papers over dessert. I sat, but I didn't unfold my napkin. I watched them serve the food, acting as if the last 3 days of fraud and theft hadn't happened. Before we start, I said, my voice cutting through the clinking of silverware, I have a question about Aunt Marge. Nora's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Christopher cleared his throat loudly. What about her? Nora asked, her eyes darting to the left. She called me, I lied. She asked if I liked the gift she sent, the check for $5,000. The silence that descended on the table was heavier than lead. Adeline stopped chewing. Christopher took a massive gulp of wine. Oh, that, Nora laughed nervously. Yes, well, we put that in a high-yield holding account for you to keep it safe. You know how you are with spending on books and things. A holding account, I repeated. Is that what we're calling Nordstrom now? Nora dropped her fork. It clattered against the china with a violence that made us all jump. How dare you check up on us? Christopher snarled, his face reddening. We are your parents. We manage the family assets. It wasn't a family asset, I said calmly. It was a check made out to me, for my wedding fund, and you forged my signature to cash it. We needed it, Adeline shouted, slamming her hand on the table. I needed a wardrobe for Fashion Week. Do you want me to look like a hobo? It was an emergency. It was grand larceny, I corrected. Oh, stop using legal words, Nora snapped. It's family money. It all comes out in the wash. When you get married, we'll pay for the wedding. It's the same thing. You won't pay for the wedding, I said. Because you have no money. You have $200,000 in debt and a house that's underwater because you've refinanced it 3 times to pay for Adeline's failures. That is a lie, Christopher stood up, shaking a finger at me. We are respectable people, we are. The doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the tense room like a gunshot. Who is that? Nora asked, looking panicked. We didn't invite anyone. I did, I said. I stood up and walked to the front door. My parents followed me, confused and angry. Adeline trailed behind, looking worried. I opened the door. Aunt Marge stood there. She was 70 years old, wore a tweed suit that cost more than Adeline's car, and had a gaze that could strip paint off a wall. She was my father's older sister, the matriarch of the family, and the only person Christopher was truly terrified of. Margaret, Christopher squeaked. What are you doing here? Marge didn't look at him, she looked at me. Is it true, Julia? Yes, Aunt Marge, I said, handing her the printout from the bank, the one showing the deposit of her check and the immediate transfer to Nordstrom. And here is the copy of the check you sent me from the bank archives. You can see the signature on the back isn't mine. Marge took the papers. She put on her reading glasses. She took a long, agonizing minute to review them. Nora was trembling. Margaret, please, it was a misunderstanding. We were holding it for her. Marge looked up over her glasses. Nora, be quiet. I see a transfer to a department store. Did Julia buy a wedding dress at Nordstrom? No, Adeline whispered. I bought shoes. Marge turned her gaze to Adeline. Shoes? With my money? With the money I sent to your sister because she is the only one in this family who has ever worked a day in her life. It's not fair, Adeline cried, tears finally spilling over, real tears this time, tears of fear. Julia has everything. She has a career, she has savings. I have nothing. I just wanted a chance. You have nothing, Marge said, her voice ice cold, because you are a parasite, and your parents are the hosts. Marge turned to Christopher. I am ashamed of you. I am ashamed that you carry family name, forgery, theft from your own daughter. We were going to pay it back, Christopher pleaded. With what? I interjected, stepping forward. I pulled out the second document, the spreadsheet of their debts. With the loan you tried to take out in my name yesterday, the $20,000 signature loan you applied for using my social security number. What? Marge whipped her head around to look at me. They did what? Identity theft, I said. I have the fraud alert right here. Nora sank onto the hallway bench, burying her face in her hands. Adeline was sobbing loudly now, a wailing sound that grated on my ears. That is enough, Marge said. She didn't shout. She didn't have to. Her voice was final. Christopher, Nora, Marge said, you will sell this house. We can't, Nora wailed. It's our home. It is a crime scene, Marge retorted. You will sell it. You will use the equity, if there is any left, to pay Julia back every cent you stole. The $5,000 check, the $14,000 from the trust, and the $1,000 a month she sent you for 5 years, which I now know you wasted on this child. And if we don't, Christopher challenged, though his voice was weak. If you don't, Marge said, Julia will go to the police, and I will pay for her lawyer. I will fund the most aggressive prosecution this county has ever seen. I will see my own brother behind bars before I let him steal another dime from the only decent person in this house. She turned to me. Is that agreeable, Julia? I looked at my parents. They looked small, pathetic, stripped of their bluster and their guilt-tripping power. Yes, I said, that works for me. And you, Marge said, pointing a manicured finger at Adeline. Get a job, a real one. Starbucks is hiring. I saw a sign on the way here. Adeline gasped. I can't work at Starbucks. I'm an influencer. Not anymore, I said. Because if you don't start paying your own bills, I'm going to post this police report about your theft from your marketing job on every social media platform you have. I'll tag your sponsors. I'll tag your friends. I will ruin your brand so thoroughly you won't be able to influence a dog to bark. Adeline looked at me with pure horror. She knew I had the data. She knew I would do it. You're a monster, she whispered. No, I said, opening the front door for Marge. I'm a data analyst, and I just balance the books. The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely necessary. With Marge overseeing the liquidation, my parents didn't have room to maneuver. They put the house on the market 3 days later. It sold quickly, but after paying off the mortgages, the HELOC, and the credit card debts, there was barely enough left for a small condo in a 55-plus community 2 towns over. It was a far cry from the sprawling suburban estate they used to flex their status, but it was a roof over their heads. I received a cashier's check for $24,002 weeks after the closing. It didn't cover everything they had taken from me over the years. The emotional toll was incalculable, but it covered the theft and the trust funds. I deposited it directly into my savings account. Adeline's fall from grace was less dignified. Without the aesthetic house to film in, without the luxury car, which she obviously never got, and without my parents' credit cards to fund her hauls, her content dried up. She tried to pivot to relatable struggle content, filming herself crying about her abusive sister, but I made good on my threat. I didn't post the police report publicly. I didn't want to be that person, but I did send a private email to the 3 small brands that were sending her free shampoo. I simply attached the public police blotter entry regarding her theft of corporate property. The sponsorships vanished overnight. Last I heard, she was working as a receptionist at a dental office. It wasn't Starbucks, but it was a 9 to 5. She had to wear scrubs. I heard she hates it. I haven't spoken to my parents in 6 months. They tried to call a few times, usually on holidays, usually when they wanted to complain about the condo fees, but I blocked the numbers. I did, however, have dinner with Aunt Marge last week. We went to a nice steakhouse. She ordered the wine. You know, she said, cutting into her filet mignon. I always knew you were the smart one, but I was worried you were too soft. I was worried they would eat you alive. They tried, I said, taking a sip of my Pinot Noir. They almost did. But they didn't, Marge smiled. You know, I'm updating my will. I'm setting up a trust, a real one, and I need a trustee who understands the value of $1 and doesn't tolerate nonsense. I smiled back. It was the first time in years I felt light, truly light. I think I know someone, I said. Driving home that night, I took the long way. I drove past the dealership where this all started. I looked at the gleaming white Range Rovers in the window. They looked beautiful. Oh, they looked expensive. I didn't want one. I drove my 6-year-old sedan home to my quiet, peaceful house. I walked inside, locked the door, and turned on the lights. The silence wasn't lonely anymore. It was expensive. It was hard-earned. It was mine. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't paying for anyone else's mistakes.